Black woman laughed at for bringing her baby to job interview. Then the CEO arrives. There was a moment as Danica Ross stepped off the city bus into the crisp morning air. Her baby daughter nestled against her chest in a soft gray sling. When she paused just long enough to remember who she used to be. Before all this, before the layoff, before the rent notices, before juggling formula and job alerts and wiping tiny hands while scrolling LinkedIn with her free thumb, she had been somebody. Not famous, not powerful, but respected. A solid name in the nonprofit world. Efficient, organized, tireless. That's what her supervisor had called her during her last review. Tireless. Now she was tired all the time, but still she kept moving. She pulled her coat tighter with one hand and gently rocked baby Nia, who was beginning to fuss beneath the sling, her tiny fingers curling near her mother's collar. The building ahead of her, Levtech Solutions, with its sleek glass facade and glowing lobby, rose like a monument to another world entirely, one she had once belonged to, or at least tried to. The security guard at the front desk didn't even blink as she entered, which gave her a bit of comfort. Maybe they were used to all kinds here. Maybe this wasn't a place where people raised eyebrows over a woman with a baby in a wrap carrier and a worn leather tote slung over her shoulder. Then again, maybe it was. The woman at the reception desk, early 40s, platinum blonde bob, blazer sharp enough to cut glass. Glanced up as Danica approached, then lowered her eyes to the child tucked at her chest. And there it was. The look. The one Danica had grown far too used to in the last year. The quick flick of judgment. A split-second wince barely masked by politeness. Name? The woman asked. Danica Ross, she replied calmly, reaching into her bag to pull out a printed copy of her resume. Even though she'd already sent it twice by email. I have a 10:30 interview with Mr. Chin. Business analyst position. The receptionist scanned her list. Please have a seat. He's running a bit behind. Danica thanked her and turned toward the row of modern, minimalist chairs near the wall. As she sat, she noticed the others waiting. 2 men in navy suits, both white, both carrying leather folios and iPads. A young woman in a tight black dress, heels tapping impatiently against the tile, and a tall man with salt and pepper hair scrolling his phone with bored authority. All of them glanced at her. None of them smiled. Danica kept her eyes on Nia, who had begun to stir. She reached into the tote and pulled out a soft, worn pacifier, popping it gently into the baby's mouth before giving her a light bounce. She brought a baby, someone whispered nearby. It wasn't even subtle. The woman in the black dress had leaned toward the man beside her, both stifling little snickers like high schoolers in a hallway. Danica didn't look at them. She'd learned not to. Instead, she whispered softly to her daughter, "You're okay, sweet girl. We've been through worse, haven't we?" Nia gurgled in response, settling again. 10 minutes passed, then 20. More candidates arrived. None of them brought children. And the receptionist? She kept darting glances in Danica's direction. The longer she sat there, the more the disapproval hardened. At last, she stood, walked around the desk, and approached. "I'm sorry, Ms. Ross, but it might be best if we reschedule your interview. I'm not sure this is the appropriate environment for." "I understand," Danica said quietly, but with a steel that rose from somewhere deep. "But I'm not rescheduling. My daughter isn't a disruption. She's the reason I'm here." The other candidates looked up. "Oh, come on," muttered one of the men. "This is a corporate firm, not a daycare." Danica turned to him calmly. "Do you think I don't know that? Do you think I chose to walk into this room, already judged, with my child in my arms, because I thought it'd win me points?" Silence. She adjusted the strap of the sling. I lost my childcare at 7 a.m. when my sitter had a medical emergency. Could have canceled, but I didn't, because I can't afford to wait for the next opportunity. I need to work. I want to work. And I came here hoping someone might judge me on my skills, not the fact that I'm doing the job of two people every single day. The receptionist opened her mouth, but before she could reply, a door at the end of the hall opened. A tall man stepped out, Asian American, mid-50s, lean, with smart eyes and a navy suit that somehow looked effortless. His presence shifted the air in the room immediately, and everyone straightened. "Is there a problem?" he asked. The receptionist jumped. "Oh, Mr. Chin. No, not at all. I heard everything," he said, stepping forward, eyes fixed on Danica. She stood slowly. Her hands trembled, but not from fear. Mr. Chin smiled. "You must be Ms. Ross." "I am," she said, squaring her shoulders. He glanced down at Nia, who was now wide-eyed and blinking up at him like a curious little owl. Then he looked back at Danica. "I have 3 kids," he said. "My youngest used to attend board meetings strapped to my chest while I pitched to investors. Some of them laughed, too. I don't work with those investors anymore." There was a long pause. "Come in," he said. "Let's talk." Danica followed him, the door closing softly behind them, and the silence in the waiting room was deafening. The door to the conference room clicked shut behind them, and for a moment Danica just stood there, caught in that odd, suspended space between survival instinct and disbelief, the space where your body is still braced for judgment, but something else entirely is unfolding instead. "Please, Mr. Chun gestured toward a chair at the long glass table. "Sit wherever you're comfortable, or stand if that works better with the baby." Danica nodded gratefully, adjusting the sling across her shoulder before gently easing herself into one of the plush white leather chairs. Baby Nia, as if reading the room, gave a soft sigh and drifted into what Danica hoped would be at least a 20-minute nap. She'd learned to measure everything in increments of time. Nia would stay still. Mr. Chun didn't take the chair at the head of the table, the obvious power spot. Instead, he chose the one across from her, placing his phone face down and leaning forward with both elbows on the table. "So," he said, his tone warm but direct, "before we begin the formal part of this conversation, I want you to know I don't care that you brought your child. I care that you came prepared, on time, and clearly serious about the role. That alone says more about your professionalism than a pressed suit or a silent phone ever could." Danica felt something unclench in her chest. "Thank you. That means a lot. I know what it's like to fight for dignity in a room full of quiet condescension," he said, folding his hands. "And I know how easy it is for people to underestimate someone who doesn't fit their expectations. I've had that happen enough times myself." Danica nodded slowly. "Honestly, I wasn't even sure you'd see me. I half expected to be turned away before I got to say a word." "You almost were," he replied, "but not by me. And believe me, I'll be having a conversation about that." Danica sat straighter, trying to steady her thoughts. "I've been out of full-time work for a little over a year. My last job was with a housing equity nonprofit in Newark. I was their outreach coordinator and eventually moved into data analysis. We did some really effective work around eviction prevention using predictive data modeling." Mr. Chen's eyebrows lifted. "You know how to build predictive models?" "I helped the data team track variables across eviction filings, income changes, and regional employment loss. We used Python and Tableau mostly, and I wrote the briefs for local officials so they could act on the data. I'm not a developer, but I understand how the architecture works. I speak tech well enough to be useful." A flicker of genuine interest crossed his face. That's impressive. I love that work, she said, smiling softly. But the funding dried up. Then Nia was born. And well, the pandemic didn't exactly make hiring easier. Mr. Chun tilted his head. You've been managing job searches while raising a baby alone? Danica hesitated. Yes, her father isn't around. Not since the second trimester. A moment passed, the kind of moment where someone might offer a platitude. But Mr. Chin didn't. He simply said, that's a whole job in itself, and you're still here pitching yourself like a pro. I didn't come here to ask for sympathy, Danica said gently. I came here because I believe I can solve problems your team hasn't solved yet. Mr. Chin smiled. I like that. He reached for a folder on the table and opened it, revealing a copy of her resume, printed and annotated. I read your application last night, he said. You have something we don't see enough of, people who think laterally. Not just what's the task, but what's the system behind the task? And that's what we need right now. Danica leaned forward slightly. Is the role mostly technical? A mix, he said. We're expanding our community-focused tech initiatives, especially after our public ethics audit. The board wants proof that we aren't just a data firm sitting in glass towers. They want results that impact real people. She smiled. Then it sounds like I'm in the right place. You might be, he said, nodding. But I need to know something. Anything. He leaned in. If my team resents me hiring someone who walked in with a baby, if they whisper, if they question it, are you going to shrink? Danica didn't blink. Absolutely not. I've spent too many hours holding my child in one arm and building solutions with the other. I've worked through fevers and 3 feedings. There's no room left in me for shrinking. He nodded slowly, then stood. Walk with me. Danica blinked. Sorry, I want you to meet someone. He's a little intimidating, but I think you can handle him. She rose, following him out the door and down a hallway lined with modern art and etched glass. As they walked, Mr. Chun spoke in a low voice. Our founder, the big boss, the real decision-maker, still holds final hiring power on every strategic role. He's sharp, demanding, but fair. If he says yes, you're in. Danica felt her heartbeat pick up. Now, Mr. Chin smiled. Now. As they turned the corner, Danica adjusted Nia's sling again, smoothing her baby's soft curls as the infant stirred and made a small cooing sound. She kissed the top of Nia's head and whispered, We're okay, baby. We're more than okay. Then the door opened, and behind a massive walnut desk, in an office filled with floor-to-ceiling windows and the scent of old books and coffee, the CEO stood up to greet her. What happened next would change everything. The room was quiet in the way only important rooms are. Sound seemed to press against the polished walls, like even echoes knew to hold their breath. Danica stepped inside. The office was enormous, with tall windows overlooking downtown and bookshelves that ran from floor to ceiling, filled with hardcover volumes, awards, and framed photographs. The furniture was clean-lined, modern, but softened by a large Persian rug that felt surprisingly lived in. Behind the walnut desk stood a man in his early 70s, tall and commanding, with silver-gray hair brushed back neatly, and eyes sharp enough to read hesitation like a headline. He wore a charcoal blazer over a turtleneck, and a single gold watch glinted on his wrist as he moved toward her. This was Nathaniel Lev, founder of LevTech, whose signature graced the mission statement that hung beside the company's main elevator. The kind of man whose name showed up in TED Talks, whose words were quoted by leadership consultants, and whose wealth could build cities. But in this moment, he smiled softly and held out his hand. Ms. Ross, he said. I'm Nathaniel. Danica returned the handshake carefully, making sure not to jostle Nia, who had now fully woken and was peering up at the strange room with those big, curious eyes. Thank you for seeing me, she said. I've been following this one closely, he replied, shooting a knowing look at Mr. Chan, who stood near the corner now, arms crossed. David told me everything. Danica wasn't sure what everything entailed, but she nodded. She's quiet, Nathaniel said, motioning to Nia with a softness that surprised her. She's a good listener, Danica replied. I think she knows when her mama needs the silence. He gestured toward a set of armchairs near the windows. Please sit. You look like you've been carrying more than just your baby lately. Danica exhaled, grateful to finally rest again. That would be accurate. Nathaniel took his seat opposite her, crossing one leg over the other, studying her not with the cold calculation of an executive, but with the curiosity of someone deeply used to reading people for who they are, not who they pretend to be. I grew up with a single mother, he said, in a walk-up above a grocery store in the Bronx. She worked nights cleaning offices and brought me with her when she couldn't afford a sitter. I learned to type at her vacuuming jobs, using the secretary's desk when no one was watching. Danica blinked. I had no idea. Most people don't. That's the benefit of distance, it lets you control the narrative. But I haven't forgotten. Not for a second. He leaned forward, steepling his fingers. So tell me something, Ms. Ross. Why did you come here today? She answered immediately. Because I want to work. Because I'm good at what I do. Because I'm not waiting for the world to be convenient before I act. His smile widened just slightly. But more than that, Danica continued, voice steady, I want to be somewhere that values who I am now. Not just who I used to be before I became a mother, or who they think I might become once I'm back to normal. This is my normal, and I'm not going to hide it. Nathaniel was quiet for a long moment. Then he turned to David Chun and asked, Did you see the data samples she sent in? Her case study on predictive eviction mapping? Yes. Solid analysis, clean visuals, actionable conclusions. Nathaniel nodded, then turned back to Danica. Are you prepared for the scrutiny that might follow if we hire you? If people say we're making a statement hire, that we've caved to pressure, or that we're being performative? Danica's eyes didn't flinch. I've had people reduce me to every label they could fit in their mouth. Single mother, black woman, too soft, too direct, too late, too early, too ambitious, not enough. I'm not afraid of their opinions. I'm afraid of letting my daughter grow up thinking those opinions define her. Nathaniel leaned back, a slow breath leaving his lungs. I built this company from scratch, he said. But I'll be honest with you, there are days I walk into boardrooms and wonder if we've built a castle too far from the people it was supposed to serve. Danica tilted her head. Then maybe it's time to open some new doors. He chuckled. You sound like my wife. I'll take that as a compliment. He stood again, walking to his desk, where he picked up a slim folder and returned to her, offering it with both hands. This is an offer, he said simply. Full-time. Strategic data analyst, hybrid flexibility. Benefits start day one. Salaries competitive and negotiable. Take it home. Think about it. No rush. Danica reached for the folder, stunned. You're serious? I am, he said. I don't make decisions based on optics. I make them based on instinct. And my instinct says, this company needs more people like you. Behind him, David Chun gave a small, satisfied nod. Danica looked down at Nia, who blinked up at her as if she already understood the weight of what had just happened. Thank you, Danica said, voice trembling slightly. I won't let you down. I'm not worried, Nathaniel said. But one request. Anything. When your daughter's old enough to type, he said with a grin. Teach her at my desk. Danica laughed, the sound fuller than it had been in months. Deal. As she stood to leave, offer folder in one hand, child in the other, the hallway beyond seemed to glow with the possibility of a different kind of future. Not because she'd been given a handout, but because she'd refused to sit quietly until the world made room for her voice. And now that voice had been heard. The elevator doors closed softly behind her, and as Danica descended through the gleaming floors of LevTech Solutions, her baby girl still curled close to her chest, her fingers gently wrapped around the edge of the manila folder. Something inside her shifted. Not relief, not quite triumph, but something deeper. Validation. She'd walked in carrying a child and a resume. She walked out carrying an offer and her dignity intact. She hadn't raised her voice. She hadn't explained her existence. She had simply told the truth and refused to shrink from it. By the time she exited the building, the chill of the morning had warmed, and the sun bounced off the glass towers like applause. She stood on the sidewalk staring at the folder again, not because she doubted it was real, but because holding proof in your hand means something when the world's tried so hard to tell you you're not enough. Her phone buzzed. Text from Amina, her best friend since college. So, how did it go? Did they freak about Nia? Should I go over there and set something on fire? Danica smiled and typed back quickly. I got the job. And Nia slept through most of it like the queen she is. 3 dots pulsed. Then, what? Sis, I am screaming. Call me. No, I'm calling you. Right now. Danica laughed, then turned the ringer off. Later, she whispered to her daughter. Let's go get pancakes first. Celebration food. She moved down the sidewalk with a lightness that defied the weight of the past year. And for the first time in months, she didn't check over her shoulder. The next morning, Danica returned to the office, not as a visitor, not as a risk, not as a pity case, but as a strategic hire, complete with onboarding documents, keycard access, and a calendar full of real work. This time, she left Nia with Amina, whose mother had offered to help. The receptionist, the same sharp-looking woman from the day before, blinked when Danica approached. Her expression flickered between recognition, discomfort, and something like reluctant respect. Good morning, Danica said, voice neutral but not unkind. The woman swallowed. Good morning, Miss Ross. You're expected on the 12th floor. Danica nodded and stepped into the elevator, letting the silence say the rest. On the 12th floor, a young man with nervous eyes and an overambitious tie met her at the elevator. Hi, I'm Aaron. Char. I'll walk you through orientation, get you set up with your laptop, and show you where everything is. He led her through glass-walled offices and high-tech meeting rooms, the air filled with the soft clatter of keyboards and the gentle hum of controlled ambition. Everyone here moved quickly, confidently. She wondered how long it would take them to learn who she was, or who they thought she was. But she had no plans to shrink. Later that day, she met her direct team, 3 data analysts, 1 project coordinator, and a UX researcher, all of whom had heard murmurs of her unconventional interview but were too polite or too unsure to ask directly. It was the coordinator, a black woman named Sasha, who finally broke the tension. So, she said, smiling over her coffee mug, you brought your baby to the interview and still got the offer? That's iconic. Like, honestly, power move. Danica chuckled. It wasn't a move, just a necessity. Still, Sasha said, you didn't fold. That's something. Another teammate, Jonah, a data guy with curly red hair and big wireframe glasses, leaned forward. Honestly, That made me respect leadership more. Not that they hired you, that they listened to you. We've had people walk in here with less grit and get away with everything." Danica blinked. "Wait, what do you mean?" Sasha rolled her eyes. "One of the guys last year was late 3 times during the interview process and still got the job. And I'm talking hours late. Nobody batted an eye. But when a woman walks in with a baby, everyone wants to clutch pearls." Danica exhaled. "Yeah, I noticed." Jonah added, "Well, I'm glad you're here. You're already shaking the place up, and it's only Monday." That evening, Danica sat at the tiny kitchen table in her apartment. Nia asleep in her lap, a plate of cold dinner forgotten in front of her. Scrolling through documents from onboarding, she paused at the company values: integrity, inclusion, innovation. 3 simple words, easy to print, harder to live. And yet, something told her this place might actually try. A knock came at the door. She opened it to find Amina, holding a bottle of champagne and a bag of takeout. "Don't tell me you've already skipped dinner," Amina said, stepping in. "Guilty," Danica smiled. "But look, I've got logins. I've got a health plan. I've even got a Slack channel that isn't just memes and corporate nonsense." "And you did all this?" Amina said, leaning over Nia and kissing her forehead. "Without pretending you were anyone else." Danica met her gaze, soft but steady. "I'm done pretending." Amina raised her glass. "To being seen." Finally, they toasted quietly, the sound of their glasses just loud enough to mark the moment. The weeks that followed became a quiet revolution. Danica didn't come to Levtech to make a statement. She came to work, and she did. Efficiently, precisely, with a kind of calm urgency that made her team lean in and trust her instinctively. Within the first month, she streamlined their community metrics dashboard, translated 2 stalled pilot programs into launch-ready strategies, and flagged an unnoticed pattern in their neighborhood expansion model that would have cost the company close to $80,000. By month 2, even the skeptics were nodding in meetings when she spoke. But the whispers never stopped. Sometimes in elevators, sometimes in Slack threads that someone accidentally shared. Words like symbol hire, or PR move, or worse, pity pick. She noticed them always, but she never answered them. Not until the quarterly town hall. It was a Friday afternoon. Every employee from every department filled the company auditorium, the air buzzing with the usual small talk and predictable applause. Danica was seated 3 rows from the front. Mr. Chun stood on stage, giving the usual updates, milestones, future goals, some polished charts about impact and reach. Then came a surprise. "I want to close with something different," he said. "I want to share a story." The room quieted. 6 weeks ago, a candidate came in for an interview, carrying her resume in one hand and her baby in the other. Some people laughed. Some questioned the professionalism. Some even said it made us look unserious. A ripple moved across the room. Danica's heart pounded. But that woman, Danica Ross, has outperformed expectations in ways that aren't just measurable by numbers. She reminded us that people don't come to work empty. They bring their stories, their struggles, their strength. He turned and looked at her. And sometimes the ones we overlook or underestimate are the ones building the future in real time. The crowd began to clap, then louder, and when Danica stood, it became a standing ovation. She didn't cry. She just nodded, gently bouncing Nia, who had joined her in the last 15 minutes and now sat on her hip, wide-eyed and blinking. Later, someone asked her if she had planned to make such an impact, if she had intended to prove something. Danica just smiled. "No," she said. I just didn't leave myself a choice to fail.